Hi, it's Warren Huart here. Hope you're doing marvellously well. I'm sitting here with Stefan Lindlahr. Is that right?
Nearly, yeah.
Nearly.
Just say Stefan.
Stefan from Celemony, and we're going to be talking about Melodyne. How are you?
Very well. Still a little bit jet lag. We're sitting here in LA and we just flew in. And,
which is fantastic. And you come in for NAMM.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is where we met a year ago. Probably like a year ago today or something like that.
Yeah.
And you had just released, what's the latest version of Melodyne called?
It's version 4.1. We just released a few days before Christmas,
right.
End of 2016.
And when I seen you at NAMM, it was 4.
It was 4.0. It was a major
0.
update, which was new at last year's NAMM when we spoke.
And those of you that were watching me talk to Stefan about that will know that I was kind of freaking out because we had taken... Wait, what was it? What was the Indian instrument?
I think it was something like a tabura.
Yes, which was great because I just finished Trevor Hall's album, which was covered with Indian instruments, so I was all intrigued by it. And we were taking like second and third harmonics and creating like other melodies out of it.
Exactly.
And then you and I had this whole long conversation, probably driven by my obsession, but talked about Bowie's Berlin albums with Eno and just like what we could have imagined what somebody like Bowie would have done with that kind of technology. So what we want to do in this series of lessons, in this series of tutorials, is like going on the basics of what Melodyne can do. And I get asked all the time, so let's sort of jump in. Okay. Let's jump in with some basic tuning tutorials because, look, one of the conversations you and I had on Skype before we set this up was, and there's going to be a big debate in below with all the questions and comments, and it's fine, debate it, is why do you tune and when should you and all this kind of stuff? Because I've been blessed, and I'm sure many people watching have been blessed to work with incredible singers. And those that know me know I'm obsessed with Freddie Mercury, who is the greatest of the greats. And these are guys that were never tuned. However, they did punch in and fix. Mm-hmm. They were coming in and they were re-singing parts till they nailed it and then moving on. One of the blessings that we had when you and I were kids coming up doing this is budgets were big. You could go in, a 6-week record was a standard album. I don't know about people watching now, but I'm making records in days. Sometimes weeks, but often in days. That do sound great. So these kind of tools aren't obligatory things that we go in there and tune every single note. Used tastefully, they're actually a wonderful way to take an incredible vocal and maybe just adjust a note. Maybe when that singer just went a little flat, it was great one time, but the second time it was a little too flat. And it's not always about just snapping it back to the grid, but using it as a tool to fit into the modern world where we live, where we have a limited amount of time to get great results. So I wanted to talk about that because I didn't want to have this. We're not saying go in there and tune every single note on everything perfectly. I don't believe in that. My favorite singers.
That would be the biggest mistake you would do with any tool. Just go in and put the one tool on everything.
Yes.
It's really would be a very bad idea. It's actually the opposite. You should listen to the performance you have, listen to all the nuances, and Melodyne is helping you a lot in analyzing the music and analyzing the performance, and then you find bits and pieces here and there which you might want to change, not only because something was actually wrong in the terms of a mistake.
Yep.
I mean, if you do a mistake, you just sing it again.
Yes.
And you do a lot of takes, you comp it, and you get a really nice comped take with no mistakes. But still, there's something in the expression here or there, and the timing and whatever, and nuances of the intonation or so. And that's where Melodyne comes in great. Not to put 100% tuning on everything. So that would be really a mistake. And
yes, absolutely. Yeah, taste. As we were talking about earlier off camera, taste is the biggest thing as a producer, engineer, or any working in music in general. Taste is your biggest friend. Having good taste and knowing when to do something.
And you know what? I personally believe in that. Where Melodyne helps you is in training your ear first, like looking on a performance in Melodyne, understanding more about what's going on there, and then you can make your decision which things or which aspects you want to change and which parts you want to leave untouched.
Wonderful.
And all this, and this is actually the basic idea of Melodyne. It's not about correcting mistakes. It starts earlier. It's about looking into music.
Right.
Like what we have here, for example, on the screen. This is a a bunch of notes. It looks like tiny small waveforms. I can play it back. It's a picking guitar. And normally in a DAW you would see one long waveform, which would actually give you not too much information. You can see, oh, it's louder there, and it's less loud there, and that's about all. You don't see which note is played or which chord it is. And what Melodyne does, it analyzes the music when you load it into it, and then it just translates it into notes, like a MIDI editor actually. It's pretty like a note editor. Here you have the notes, and you can see, for example, this note here, he picked the E, and so you can even see the song is in F major. So that's what Melodyne finds out automatically, and you look at it, and then it gives you freedom to change things which you couldn't do if you just have one big waveform only. For example, if you just let me play this back without the cycle. Let me bring in some more instruments, probably like let's listen to the vocal also. Bass in here. You see, I just added a few instruments. They all show up there if I want to. And maybe the first things I would do if there was like this guitar picking, it was pretty nice. We recorded it to start with the song. I just have the turn off the bass again and the piano. So the red ones are the picked guitar, and the other one is the vocal. I can just switch the roles, so you can see now this is the vocal. And there's a specific part where the picking, if you listen to it on its own, like this, it's a nice variation or so. But it doesn't work with the vocals that we recorded later. So what we then simply do, we just, this note, for example, could go there. This note probably could go there. So I just took out the variation he actually played, because I don't want it to interfere with the singer. If you listen like this. So what I just did, first we did the recording of the guitar, then we added the vocal, and then later we decided, oh, it would have been nicer if the guitar picking was, in this example, less had less variations. So I just changed it. It's something I did here, which we used to do since decades on MIDI.
Sure.
But with Melodyne you can do it on audio. And you can also do the opposite if he was playing the same pattern all the time, and you kind of get bored a little bit. When you add the other instruments, then you see, oh, well, maybe a nice variation would be nice, and just drop a note and do your variations there. So that's one thing. You change the composition, and you don't change mistakes. It's just, I'm not talking about mistakes or intonations issues. I'll come to that later.
Using it as a creative tool.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, no, it's a creative tool.
Creative is a big word for just what I did. I just
I think it's actually
moved a few notes around. That's not.
Well, it's but from a producer's point of view, a lot of what I do sometimes is getting to the point. And I work with artists and myself even. I'll play something and I'll embellish it. Obviously, that's a subtle embellishment, but sometimes I might embellish it so much that my ear is taken away by the guitar part when I should be listening to the vocal. And as a producer, you're sitting there working with an artist, with a guitar player, and going, okay, that's a really nice inversion, but my ear went there and I didn't hear what the singer was saying. So you simplify. And then you go, but look in this 2-bar sequence here, or this 2-beat sequence here. There's no vocal, just put that little flourish in that section between it. So it is a creative tool.
And that's beautiful that you can do this after you've done the original recording. So that's pretty unique. You can't do this any other way. And then, of course, you use it for kind of correction, everything. So at the beginning of this bar, this note, and I think also the lower string down here, he played the right notes, or he played the notes that he wanted to play, but they don't sound good. Just listen to it. There's a little, he just didn't hit it right. So what I would do then, I would listen to it and see if I can find some better sounding versions of these notes. Like here, so this note and this note, they sound better. So I just copy them. I just now hit Command C. Go back to the 2 notes I didn't like and just put paste. And so I copied the better sounding notes over there. and I'm done. I
Great.
just repaired the sound. You could do this in your DAW. You do it all the time in your DAW. You copy and paste. But what I copy here is just one note, or in this example, 2 notes out of many notes sounding into each other. So you can't do this actually on many spots with problems like this. You can't do it on your DAW and with Melodyne.
Well, no, because you're taking a chunk of 3 notes combined together, and you're going to approximate where the ending of all those different notes is here. Where here you're taking those 2 notes and replacing them with 2 completely different notes.
Or even to go more creative, you could, for example, select this note if you particularly like it, hit copy, and paste it in here, and there it is. So you just added another finger on your guitar.
Sure.
Something you couldn't do without Melodyne. And
I could do that. I mean, I just need to do my...
Actually, if you record something into a Melodyne, I could change just one finger on the fret. I can make the lower third to the minor third to a major third, or the other way around.
Right.
So that's where the beauty begins in terms of composing. You really can change the chords. And if you work with samples, which is a pretty different thing, but if we record the guitar here in the studio where we're sitting here and we don't like the chord you played, then you just play a different chord until we like it.
Sure.
So it's easy. But you find a sample which you like, and this sample is, say, F minor. And we want to use it in our song. We have to make it.
You're making me think of a really interesting question. So when you're taking a chord like an F major, to sound perfect on a guitar which is tuned in fourths, the A has to sound very slightly flat. That gives us a really beautiful sounding F major chord. So my question would be, you know where I'm going, can you go in there and detune that A ever so lightly? Is there an incremental way of doing it?
Sure. What you can do, you can tune every note. So I select this one note, and then I can move it up and down, as you already saw. You can do it really subtle, and you can also, to the left here, you can see the parameters here. And this is actually, it was tuned too high.
Right.
So I can just tune it down slightly. You see how the note moves. I'm just overdoing just to show it. And
so slightly flat.
Actually, the first thing I would have done here to correct this slightly tuning issues that are in the guitar, like this string was a little bit high, so I just would do it like this. And I want to have equal tuning, I would do it slightly flat. On the other hand, if you don't know exactly where it should go, because equal tuning is kind of a specialty, there's a much easier way. Just select the notes that make up the F, just disregard the D that's playing in the bass, or select them all together, would give you a different result, whatever you're up to. And then we have a command here. It tells you to apply dynamic just tuning. So what it does now, it retunes all those notes I selected, so they fall into a just tune, equal tuning, sorry. And it directly starts to sound as it should be.
Yeah, although the A starts to scream out to me now. So let's take that A and detune it ever so slightly.
In which direction you want to have it?
You want to flatten it.
Flatten it, so you just would move it slightly down.
Yeah, like...
Well, I'm just overdoing it, I think.
Yeah, that should be good. Let's have a listen to that chord. It's interesting. See, now we're in a territory which is great, because now the chord soloed will probably sound really, really sweet, but it no longer works against the vocal. This is where the taste comes in. It's like not a case of just tuning things. I find that a good analogy is like drums. You record drums and bass and guitars live on the floor. You go back, you edit the drums. Suddenly the bass player and the guitar player have no relationship with the drums anymore. So what do? You edit within itself. You maybe go, oh, I like this fill, and put that fill in. You don't re-edit the drums super tight, because you're going to be recutting the bass and guitars. So from a tuning point of view there, it's like, yeah, now that chord is probably soloed beautiful. The F major probably sounds amazing with that slightly flattened A, but it has no relationship now with the vocal or any other instrument, because they're all in that tuning around each other. Great musicians are able to play off each other. She's singing to the guitar. He is playing to a piano, which may or may not be perfectly in tune.
So the thing is, what you probably want to do if you record some instrument that wasn't tuned pretty well, it's not a good idea to do overdubs on other instruments, because a good singer will work with this, and
Sure.
he or she will adapt to it. And then if you then later retune the guitar, your vocal gets
Exactly.
out of it. So that's, if you record an instrument that wasn't tuned perfectly, you should correct it and then do your overdubs.
Right.
But if it happens, and you know how it is, and maybe you're working with samples that are kind of strangely tuned, and so and people give it to you for mixing, and you realize that the tuning wasn't good, and the people who send it to you, they didn't realize. Okay, you can do it later. And what I just did on this guitar, I would actually do for all the tracks simultaneously on this specific part, which is pretty easy, because I would then, the bass, for example, I would put on the screen along with the guitar, the vocal also, and also the piano. And then I would select all notes that are playing in this part, or in the whole, everything. And then I would apply the dynamic tuning for all of them. So now they are tuned in respect to each other.
Let's have a listen.
It's supposed to sound better. It's actually already sounding better, but I would then, in this example, the vocal has a kind of insecure attention to it in this specific note here. See, this is I just zoomed in here, you can see. So this beyond, it's actually, it's two notes. She's singing F and A. But she's not a pitching fork, or what you say. So she's not da da. It's like she's going there, which is, this is the expression, which is the feeling I probably may like, or may not. And this is one thing here now, which is very important to understand. You see the two notes, and to the left you can read the pitch. This is F, this is A. But watch this line in front of it, this curve moving up or down. This is the actual pitch. And you can see how she's going from up to there, and during the note of this, I think that's the second part of the word, she's going too high. So the note in general, the whole note, is measured by Melodyne like all the movements from here until here. They have an average of so and so much hertz, and this would be in respect to the master tuning of the song and everything. This will result in an A, which in this example is still a little bit flat. We just moved it there because we wanted to have this dynamic tuning, and remember the A in this example should be a little bit flat. So it's probably the average of this curve is okay, but you have to listen to it, and then you realize she's kind of getting too high for a short moment. It sounds insecure. What you do there, you have different strategies now.
I like this. It sounds insecure. I like that.
Yeah, we're talking not about mistakes here. It's like the attitude.
Sure.
Is it secure? Is it soulful? Is it strict? Is it cold, or whatever? When you work with Melodyne, you start to care for those kind of attributes in a performance.
Great.
It's not only about frequencies or something.
Oh no, trust me, I record and comp vocals all day before I get anywhere near any potential tuning. That's the last thing I do in a process. I like to loop sections and move through playlists and build a comp, and then the last possible thing I do is look for.
Well, I will show you comping later, and this may give you some new insight on comping, what you just released on this NAMM, or shortly before this NAMM, this 4.1. It has some new comping stuff, which is really interesting. But let's get back to this part. Sure. Actually, probably I would have a better take then, and I would comp some other thing. But say I don't have a better take, or that's the only thing somebody sent to me, maybe I didn't record it myself, so I have to live with it. So what would I do? I have different strategies. You see, I have different tools for different things.
Right.
And for example, I have one tool for changing the pitch modulation. So the pitch modulation would be like the vibrato, for example. If you have a strong vibrato, your curve will go up and down, and then you can say, well, that's too much of it. So you just turn it down a little bit, so you don't draw in a new vibrato technically. You just take what's there and just lower it a little bit, or you can over exaggerate it with this tool, like I do here now. You see, my problem here is that she was going up there for too much. I'm just overdoing it. I now make it a straight line.
Cool.
And this might now sound artificial, but let's see. I don't like it personally. It's too clean. I would probably choose a setting like this or so. Right. Or I have a different strategy. Just let me redo this to the original state. Yeah. I would probably still cut this note, so I have a different note for cutting things. And now watch when I cut, the note changes.
Yep.
But it doesn't change acoustically. That's some important thing you have to understand. It's really a basic first thing when you're about tuning. If you do additional separations, that's what we call this cutting up. Remember I told you Melodyne is recalculating the pitch on the basis of the average of the whole movement. So now I have a new note with a different movement, so the average pitch gets reinterpreted. And now this part, which I just chop up, is measured as 33 hertz too high. That's how you can see how much too high this was. And so I bring this back to, if you don't like this annoying kind of synthesizer pitch thing, by the way, I'll turn this off. So, and now watch this thing to the left where it says now it's minus 13, so it should probably go. Normally you would say to 0 cent offset, but in our case, because we wanted to work with just tuning, it would be around minus 7. So that's actually where this note should go, and then I would turn this up there a little bit. Maybe this I would leave because I like how she's going back there, so let's listen to it. Still, this is pretty much too high. And maybe I don't like the time she uses, so I could, with a different tool, make this become steeper. Or I would go in there, now it's getting a little bit sophisticated. I use the timing tool and I just, only this part I make become a little bit faster. Like it's now beyond, now she's getting more expression to this, because I just changed the timing. So actually with these tools you do things that you normally would tell the singer. You would say, oh, do it more precisely, or do it more laid back, do it softer, do it whatever. So, and you have tools for this. But to use these tools properly, you have to learn how to read this curve thing. That's what I was wanting to show here with this example.
Right.
Reading this curve properly and translating what you hear into the equivalent of what you see in this curve. So this is the key of using it properly. And if you watch people use Melodyne on a very professional basis, it's amazing to see how many things they cut up just to work quick and easy. And we take this into account because we have, just let me select these two nodes, and we have a command here which separates automatically this stuff where the movement is going. And then you could, with this slider here, you could correct these slices like this, make it become a really steady thing. I'll just do it in the cycle again, just to hear. So this was the original. And now so again, this is now, I didn't choose 100% now. That's a matter of taste again, how much control do you want to have. So this was a quick run through the basic tools, the basic understanding. Read this pitch curve.
Great.
Decide where you want to edit. In my example here, I did a lot of things because I now edit all parts of this note. That's probably because this take wasn't so good. I might have had a better take in where I would have needed less kind of edits.
No, but we're sort of, no, I understand totally, but we're sort of assuming that this is all we've got to work with. So it's either going to be your best comp, or like you said, somebody has sent you a vocal. I think, honestly, as a mixer these days, I mean, I'm still mainly a producer, engineer, mixer in that order. But as a mixer these days, I find that I'm having to, people are expecting it to come back better. That's the point of hiring a mixer. So a lot of mixers like myself are either being forced into comping a vocal sometimes. I'd rather not, because that's hours of work. But at the very least, we're getting in there and we're doing pitch correction where necessary. Even sometimes adding harmonies and stuff like that if they want to take it over the edge. Because a lot of people are recording and don't have necessarily this knowledge. They know how to get amazing ideas down, and they're looking for you to take it over the finish line. And maybe that's a little bit more than the job description as a mixer to do this stuff, but ultimately, if you're being hired as a mixer and you want to give somebody an amazing result, then get stuck in and do these subtle things. Maybe if it's just twice in a song, but it's the difference between somebody listening to it and going, wow, he's improved my song. You know, so.
That's actually really true. The improvement often lies in just this one spot here, the one spot there.
Yeah.
That's, some people may overhear it, and they can, they would say, well, that's a good vocal. It's a very good vocal. Sure. It's nice. But you, when you have the skills of a good Melodyne editor, you would say, okay, it's a good vocal, but I make it a even better vocal, maybe possibly a perfect vocal if I go in for this little thing there and a little thing there. And I've been talking to many producers, and I ask them, because we want to learn from our power users how they actually use it, and I ask them questions like, okay, how many takes do you need for your comping? When do you use Melodyne? How many spots do you edit with Melodyne? And the pro guys, they always tell me, I have such good singers. I'm lucky. I'm blessed with working with great singers. I have good material, and I only go in there for 1 or 2, 3, 4 spots.
Right.
But that's the final thing that really makes the difference then.
Yeah.
And then you're pretty quick once you have the skills to identify the spots where you need to go to. And coming back to the first thing we started when we talked about, don't put everything into it.
Right.
That would be crazy. Just listen to it, find the spots, do subtle things, and
fantastic.
It's worth it.
Thanks ever so much. That's great, the basic tools in here. In the next video, we'll get into talking, which will be coming up soon. We'll be talking about building a double. Thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's fun.
Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Please leave a bunch of questions and comments below. Let's talk about your comping process, how you comp, and when you choose to use tuning. You know, do you tune at the very end? Do you move? Sometimes I find I'm comping and tuning at the same time if I'm moving really, really fast. But when I have the time and I have plenty of takes, I build something as beautifully as I can and then just cherry pick the odd 1 or 2 notes. That's when I have the time and a lot of takes with a singer and stuff. But as we were talking about, a lot of the time I'm mixing and that's it, I've got 1 take. And so I'm just doing the minimal amount of work. But thanks ever so much for sharing that, and have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Leave a bunch of questions and comments below.